Alright, let's talk about birds and bees. So we've got the bees and we got the... I can draw a bird. Can I draw a bird? Good enough. It's like a bird flying in the distance. You might have noticed I drew them in very different places. That's because they are very different. Bees come from the long line of insects. Bees come from insects, which come from arthropods. Birds, on the other hand, come from reptiles. Reptiles, see, it has a little tail. Which come from vertebrate very, very, very long ago. About, I want to say, like 400 million years? Split off from invertebrate. I'm gonna draw a spine here. It's like a thing with spine. Well, over here, there comes like invertebrate, which is like worm-like. So, massive differences between the things. We're talking about like 500, 600 million years of difference. They couldn't be any more different. And yet, people clump them together when they talk about the birds and the bees. Why do they do that? Because they talk about something which they both do, and that is helping plants reproduce. Bees are pollinators, and birds, they aren't pollinators, but instead they eat fruits. They eat fruits and then they fly somewhere else and then they poop out the seeds. And then when they poop out the seed gets to go into a new area that is hopefully better than where the parent is, where they can find success and grow to become a big and strong, hopefully not tree, because I hate trees. I don't know if you can actually see this plant sapling because I'm using a green screen. In this way, they're both very vital to the ecosystems that they're in, because without them, the plants in there would not be able to reproduce particularly well. But they really couldn't be any more different. Bees are invertebrates. They don't have a spine. They don't really have internal skeleton. Instead, what they have is they have an outer shell, and then there are little hairs and stuff on it, which is why they look so fuzzy and adorable. They also go through metamorphosis, like most insects do, where they have several stages. They have 4 stages in their life. They start as an egg, and then they become a larva. They become a little grub, eats a lot, and does nothing but eat and sleep. And then they become like a pupa. They encase themselves in a cocoon, and then eventually out comes the bee. And then the bee lays eggs. Only the queen does. See, bees are very similar to ants in many aspects, and that's because they're actually very closely related. Bees, wasps, hornets, ants, a lot of the things that you're thinking of as hive insects, they share a common wasp-like ancestor. So ants used to come from wasps, and then they just kind of lost their wings. And because of that, even though they did have a decent amount of time to develop separately, which is why they have many differences, they also operate in a lot of the same way. They communicate with each other via pheromones. They can do incredibly complicated things. They're among the more... Even though individually they're not very intelligent, collectively there emerges a sort of intelligence from the swarm that allows it to do many things. Like ants, they build nests. Their nests are made out of honey and wax, and also this type of like honey resin. They collect nectar from flower, which they turn into honey. They can then take the honey and turn it into wax. They do this in this hexagonal grid, and there's a reason for that. They build a hexagonal grid because the borders are made out of wax, while the insides are made out of honey. So you need a lot of honey to make a little bit of wax, and you need a lot of nectar to make a little bit of honey. So they want to use as much honey and as little wax as possible, which is why they use a hexagonal shape that maximizes the area compared to the sort of border regions. And this shape also provides a lot of structural stability, because hexagons are very powerful. Because say you're pulling this way, when the force hits the joint, because of the degree, it ends up being split equally between like the 2 lines. And because of this, hexagonal grids are extremely good at dispersing the shockwave so that it spreads out among an area and doesn't concentrate in any one part. So in terms of structural stability, They're very, 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 very powerful. Now, bees make sure to take very good care of their nests. They patrol it, they clean it. They have several areas for different things. Like they might have a region where they keep all their youngs. They might have another region which is like a food, like a nectar storage area. They might have other areas in there for all kind of stuff. They may have little bees playgrounds where they make like tunnels. They make like tunnels and stuff which seem to not have any purpose other than just the bees enjoy going through them. It's like a little bee playground. In the wild, they will try to find confined spaces. For example, the trunk of a dead tree that's fallen, or just any sort of closed space. And in case they can't find any, then they will just swarm around the queen to create this sort of living meat shield. But this is very bad. The colony does not want to do this, and if they're doing this, then it means that they're having a bad time, or they're migrating over very long distances, which they can do, by the way. Bees have pretty good memory, and they can go out as far as 10 kilometers from their nest to collect nectar. Bees can take shortcuts, which means that they must have a mental map of the area that they live in, which they can use to like cross-reference the location of things, which allows them to create shortcuts. The same way that elephants do between oases. You need the ability to remember places in order to do the connection that you can go from here to here, essentially. They can even remember people. When bees recognize their beekeeper, they will be less aggressive and more passive with them and let them do their thing, because they can remember faces. Though not for very long, because they tend to die very quickly. Bees only live for a couple of weeks, usually. They can even teach their offspring to hold a grudge against the person. Yes, bees have collective knowledge, which they pass down through the generations. One of the things can be grudges, but also they can teach their kids how to dance. This is a real thing, I'm not kidding you. In order to communicate with each other, say they find a flower that has a lot of nectar in it, or like, then they will dance. They will do this like eight-figure sort of dance, where it's supposed to tell the other bees where the thing that they found is. Some of it is instinctual. Bees will dance because they dance. That's just how they communicate. However, studies have shown that when you have a lot of young bees and no veteran experienced bees to show them the dance, the bees will have a hard time communicating between each other, and they wouldn't be able to communicate properly, so they can't dance the right way to tell each other stuff. Which I think it's really adorable that they watch their elders dance, and then they learn to shake their bum as well. They like vibrate their ass. It's very funny. I think this is the important part about the bees. And also, obviously, they can sting, but only once. Bees are not supposed to sting. Like, it's a defensive weapon, but they have very rigid hierarchies. With, of course, the queen reigning at the top. Now, the difference between a queen bee and a normal bee, essentially, any bee can turn into a queen bee. So you've got three kinds of bees. You have the drones, the workers, and the queens. The drones are, I think that some of the male ones, they're just supposed to reproduce with the queen to help her lay her eggs, just like with ants, while the workers are the ones that actually do all the work. There isn't actually a difference in the way that they are born between the workers and the queen. Any worker could become a queen if they were fed royal honey, or like royal jelly. So the thing about royal jelly, every bee is fed royal jelly when they're very, very young, but then most bees, they stop giving them the royal jelly and instead start feeding them other stuff once they go up a little. Queens will continuously get fed the royal jelly. Because of this, they're getting like more nutrients, they're getting more food, they're getting more stuff, so they end up growing bigger and stronger, which is why they get to become big and buff and become queens. If you want, you can actually buy royal jelly, so you can eat it yourself. I have tried some. It's nice. I was already a monarch before though, so I didn't really feel any difference. Are you saying the queen bee is a pillow princess? Yes. Queens do not do much. Queens will basically just like remain stationary and let the workers do all the work. This includes grooming them, feeding them, basically everything, because the queen has to focus on taking care of the taking care of the colony and giving birth, making babies. Making babies is very important work. The queen is too busy making babies to actually eat or bathe. What a life. So that's why they will usually have the workers do it for them. Drones can in fact get kicked out. Yeah, and like we talked about earlier in this video, in the fun fact portion of the video, there are imposter bees. These are things which are not bees. Usually they're beetles, because beetles, some of them look kind of close to bees, where they will try to mimic bees for a variety of reasons. Usually so that they can join their colony and steal food. If you join the colony, then you get many great things like food, safety from predators. You also get to be groomed by the bees. And by grooming, I mean they lick you and clean you and stuff. Very kinky, I know. The beetles have a variety of ways of doing this. One of the ways is that they physically look like a bee. Even though they're not one, they would be like kind of similar and have kind of similar colors. Oftentimes they will emit pheromones that are similar to bees so that they trick them. And this is the same with ants as well. It's not just with bees. There are also a lot of things that mimic ants. Extremely terrifying. Basically the plot of the Parasite anime. Extremely terrifying. A lot of those beetles that mimic the bees will also eat the bees sometimes. You know, they'll usually just silently enjoy the benefits of being groomed, being fed, stuff like that. But if they're feeling a little snackish, they might just snack on a bee. And another obvious thing, the colors on the bees, the yellow and black, are for warning. Hey, you shouldn't mess with me, I'm gonna sting you, I'm gonna pick you up real good. But like we talked about earlier, bees don't actually have many weapons at their disposal. They have the ability to swarm. There's a lot of them. They make a lot of very loud sounds with their wings, so they're very menacing. So a lot of stuff will keep away from the bees, but also they don't actually have that many weaponry. Sure, they can sting, they can like clamp around something and vibrate real hard so they will warm it up. They don't have that much like chemical weaponry and stuff. Let's talk about birds now, because this is about the birds and the bees. Let's talk about the birds. Birds can fly. Kind of obvious to say this, but mechanically it's an incredibly complicated thing to pull off. This is the same for the bees, but the bees have it way easier because frankly they're small, they're tiny. This is why they can have small wings that are more similar to, in a way, rather than wings, they're more similar to muscles. Muscles that push against the air. So they're kind of like swimming in air by flapping their wings very, very quickly. Birds, though, are different. Birds don't have the benefit of being bee-sized, except for a hummingbird. And that's why hummingbirds also have wings that flap a lot, the same way that bees do. But most birds are not like that. So most birds can't just flap their wings really, 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 really fast. For most birds, if they did have to get their wings to flap so fast, then their shoulders would break, probably. So instead, they do a bunch of other stuff. For example, birds have hollow bones. They have a lot of like basically pockets of air kind of inside of their body. With the idea being that if you have these pockets, then you weigh less. When there are holes inside of you, you just straight up weigh less. And birds will do anything to reduce their weight. A lot of birds, when they want to start flying, they will poop to get rid of the excess weight that's in them. So if you're wondering why the tree that the birds always like to hang around, why there's so much poop beneath it, this is why. Because when they want to take off, they poop. But not all birds are like this. Sometimes there will be a situation where birds will fly off to like an isolated island or someplace with no big predators, and then suddenly being able to fly doesn't matter that much because there's no predators hunting them. Flight is incredible. Like, no matter how fast the lion chases you, the lion can't fly, obviously. So flight is an incredibly powerful tool to use against predators, and it's also incredibly good to use if there's no food. If there's no food in the area that you're in, then what do? You migrate. the seasons are flipped between the northern and southern hemisphere, so birds just keep migrating essentially between the two of them to find areas where there's a lot of plants, bugs, whatever it is that they're eating. Some birds even eat like snakes and tiny vertebrates. Very common pattern that happens, birds find like an isolated island, say Australia, and then the bird doesn't need flight anymore because there are no big predators there, and instead it gives up flight and it gains the ability to grow massive and become very, very big. And this is how you get flightless bird. Flightlessness is such a common trait to evolve in birds that it literally happened independently hundreds, if not thousands of times. Because flight is real expensive. You need specialized body parts for it. You cannot weigh too much. You need very powerful muscle. It's very energy intensive. Like birds are basically made out of muscles, way more than, say, a cow. You know how there's this distinction between red meat and white meat, where red meat that comes from, say, cows, sheep, stuff like that, is more fatty. Meanwhile, white meat, which is the kind that comes from birds, has a lot less fat in it, and it's way more muscles. This is why, because they straight up do need the muscles. They don't have room for excess. They don't have the room for excess fat storage because it's extra weight. It's extra weight that's not being used to help them fly. They can't afford it. And this is a problem in its own right. This means because they don't have fat storages, it means that they can't survive, they can't hibernate, they can't survive for long if their food supply gets cut off. They basically have to constantly search for new food. And if they stop, then they die. Say humans can survive, like 3 weeks without food? Birds can't do that because they don't have fat supply in their bodies. They don't build up fat. They just build muscles. Again, they still have the most of the basic parts down, so they also have the body part of having a lot of muscles, being made of like mostly muscles. Now, other than this, one of the obviously big adaptations that they did compared to the dinosaurs is feathers. Feathers are made out of keratin, which is the same stuff that scales and fingernails are made out of. The difference between feathers and scales is not as big as you would think. Essentially, the idea is that if it's scales, then the keratin is built in say this is the body. Then for scales, the keratin is built in like a horizontal way. While for feathers, the keratin is built in a vertical way. This means that the mutation to go from scales to feathers is actually super easy. Like evolutionary wise, it's super easy to go. And feathers are way more superior flight than scales are. Scales are a hard surface that the air will hit, which means that you end up getting a lot of drag and it's gonna freak you up. Feathers are great, they're soft, they're lighter, they're very light. They're essentially just filled with air. Feathers puff up because they're full of air, but they're it's mostly empty on the inside of them. And this helps both with weight and also helps with insulation, because while you're flying very, very fast, it also means that you're experiencing it also means that you're very high and you're experiencing powerful winds, which will cool you down. Now, of course, you still get if when you're flying, you're also exercising a lot of muscle, so you do end up you do also heat up a lot just from the muscle activity of flying. Feathers are great for insulation. Air is a terrible, terrible, terrible conductor of heat, which means that the more pockets of air there are in your in your fur, the better it is at insulation. It's why mammals pretty much did the same trick, except instead of feathers, they made fur. If you look at the shape of a feather, they're built in a very particular way, right? They're built in like this sort of shape, where they're built to maximize the surface area. They're built to maximize the surface area of the feather with the air. The idea is that you want to leave a lot of gaps. You want to break down when air is coming at you, you don't want to have like a hard wall hitting it. You want there to be a lot of gaps where it can go through, and you want to break up the air that's coming towards it. So that's how they do it. Feathers are great. Feathers are a really, really amazing adaptation. There's a reason why you don't see things with scales fly. And of course, speaking of scales, birds are of course true dinosaurs. They have descended the lizard people, aka the dinosaurs. They're true in every way. Once you evolve into a group, you can't evolve your way out of it, which means that birds still count as dinosaurs. Also, if you've ever wondered why birds have like this signature shape that they have, say this is like a beak, the body and this. Now, if you've ever noticed, birds have this bump at the front that sticks out forward. Now, if you've ever wondered about that, it kind of looks like a female silhouette, like they have boobs or something, but no, that's not what it is. What it is, it's called the keel, and it's a large piece of bone that's meant to anchor muscles, because they need to have very powerful muscles for flight. So the flight muscles, so they will have like a lot of bone here, and then the muscles for the wings will attach to this big bone, because they have very powerful muscles. They need something strong to hold on to. That's why they have this shape. They do it for the gains, they do it for the power. Birds come in all shape and forms and do a bunch of very interesting things. For example, one of the things that they are best known for is their mating rituals, which can be very elaborate and very specialized. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that essentially you want to pick a mate that is fit, meaning that their genes are very good, and so your offspring will also get very good genes, and then they will have a very high chance of surviving in their environment. So you want to make sure that you pick the right partner so that your children can live long and prosper. Birds have probably some of the most elaborate, the animals with some of the most elaborate mating rituals on the planet, barring of course, humans, which have even more complex and bizarre mating rituals. I, for once, have not managed to grasp them. Unlike with birds, which we actually know quite a lot about. A lot of mating rituals will include stuff like showing off plumage or specialized parts of your body, which essentially they represent that you're getting a lot of food. Food is the key point here. Living means finding food. This is pretty much how it is for like all the animals. It's all about finding food. If you're very colorful and you have a lot of colors in your body, it usually represents that, your body can make a lot of colors because you're not suffering from malnutrition. And instead you're getting a lot of food, so you can go big, you can go strong, you can go colorful, like peacock's tails. Peacocks, of course, a very known example for this, where the males have incredibly beautiful tails. They only get these tails if they actually have a proper diet. Give a peacock a malnutrition and you'll see that they won't grow that well. This is the point of the mating ritual, to see if they're fit. Now, of course, once there's a mating ritual, then there starts being evolution towards that goal. So once females start preferring peacocks with beautiful tails, then peacocks that just naturally have very beautiful tails start emerging, and then it kind of becomes less relevant. But because these things are kind of arbitrary, but birds are not smart enough to DNA test every person that they come across. And these mating rituals can cause a bunch of very interesting behavior. For example, there's a species of birds. What they will do is they will collect items to create a sort of statue, and then they will dance around it to impress the female. Sometimes young males of that species will find an adult with a statue and then pretend to be a female so that they can watch the male perform the courting ritual, and that's how they learn. That's how they learn to do it. Man, they would love Omegle. And then sometimes the young males also, when they leave, they also grab something on their way out, steal a little piece of the statue. We gotta talk about tricking with genders. Birds are very funny with the way the gender behaves for them. Usually there will be some kind of gender difference in the colors. Usually birds of different genders will have the same general build but have different plumage, so some parts of their body will have a different color. This is not always the case, as you of course sometimes have birds that pretend to be something that they don't. For example, there's a certain species of birds that are very territorial, where some male birds that are smaller and gentler will be born with different colors. They'll be born with different colors and then pretend to be female, and they may even sleep with the guy. Some people will consider femboy being a benefit. So personally, I don't know how a bird can sleep with another bird and not realize its gender, but hey, maybe they're just having too much fun to focus on that. Birds are gay? Yeah man, birds are gay as birds in fact can be gay, and they can sleep for each other for the funsies, and they can trick each other for the funsies. And they can also have all kind of other strange things. For example, you can have a bird that is male on one half and female on the other half. Not just on the outside, their internal organs as well. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. They look amazing. There's this really famous picture of like a bird which is white on one side and red on the other one. And it's literally a split gender bird. How does that work? Because thing about birds is that they don't have two ovaries in the same way that humans do. So obviously humans have like, the uterus and then two ovaries. Birds don't have that. Birds have one ovary and one thing which is called like an ovitestis, where it's like a mix of an ovary and testis cells. Usually when the ovaries produce estrogen, it keeps the ovitestis from doing anything, but sometimes it can act weird. For example, there's this phenomenon where if the ovary stops working, but the ovitestis is fine, then the bird will start producing testosterone and basically HRT itself into becoming a male bird. They don't know how to do surgeries though, so they can't go all the way. But yeah, they basically get an injury and then they give it themselves HRT. Birds are very fascinating, aren't they? And just like bees, birds also have generational knowledge. When crows hold a grudge, then they can teach their kids that, hey, this person sucks, don't get near them. Also, when they find dead birds, when crows find other dead crows, they will convene together, essentially try to figure out what happens. And if they decide that the area is dangerous, they will stop going there because they can learn, and they will tell other crows that area is dangerous, so they shouldn't go there. I think that's enough knowledge for today. This has been a more random episode. The next one is going to be more focused. I was just having fun with just like picking a random thing, which is why this one was very scattered. And we missed, there's a bunch of stuff that we haven't talked about. Honestly, could make an entire video just about birds or just about bees. We haven't talked about nests and nest stealers, of course. Cuckoo birds that lay their eggs inside other birds' nests. Did you know that there are mafia birds, that there are certain cuckoos that will threaten other birds to take care of their babies, otherwise they will kill their own babies. Wild things that birds can do. But that is a topic for another day, for it is getting quite late, and I believe we are done here.